welcome to my first ever Kerbal Space program video. This is a voiceover, just it's easier for me to do. Anyway, we're gonna be doing a little series, I guess, where I just unlock the tech tree. I have no common enabled, Kerbal G-force limits, and part G-force limits. That's about it. If this does well, maybe I'll do more later. Alright, we're gonna start off by making the Kerbal 1. It's just going to be a small little hopper using the Flea, I think, solid rocket booster. Make sure you drain your monopropellant if you're going to use this as a tutorial. It just gives you a bit more space. It doesn't matter right now though. Just naming stuff to make sure everything stays. Add a description to your craft. Makes things easier on you once you're actually going around and actually loading them up if you ever want to fly them again. So we're going to be adding three of our mystery goos. You're just going to have to click X to go to 3 symmetry. There are a couple different types of signs we can do. We can do the mystery goo, a crew report, an EVA report, and a surface sample. So we're going to get Jebediah to do a quick EVA report. Take the data out of the cabin so that we can actually do multiple crew reports. Make sure you take a surface sample, observe a mystery goo, and then hit T to turn on SAS, or click it, and then since it's just an SRB, it really doesn't matter. Make sure your parachute isn't going to be in the way. We're just going to fly until towards the KSC so that we can land somewhere in the KSC. Just give ourselves a bit of extra science. So we're going to observe one mystery goo once we get up. We're going to do a crew report. We sadly can't do an EVA report right now. We're going much too fast and we're in the atmosphere. It's just not a great idea. Now, all this footage is going to be in real time, probably just this first video, just because it's a first video for me, but that's not the point. So we're just going to wait, going to time warp down, deploy our parachute at 10,000 meters. It should fully deploy around, I think it's about 1,000 by default. I think I end up turning it up just so I can do another EVA report. I want to make sure to get all of that science. It's very important. So we're just going to kind of time warp down. Once we get near the bottom, you might just want to stop your time warp just in case there's some weird bug. You don't want to accidentally get rid of something. But once you slow down and the main chute is deployed fully, you can do another EVA report, perhaps another crew report if you take the data. And then this is when something interesting happened. So we can't actually board with all the experiments we have, which is a problem. So we're just going to write it down. And since Jebediah is a pilot, he can't run science experiments outside of the craft, which kind of stinks for me. So I'm just trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. I end up just jumping off, taking the EVA report and a surface sample beforehand, and then we're just gonna recover Jebediah here. So then we can get another craft. This one's just going to be so we can get that last mystery go. We gotta maximize the amount of science we get. So we're just putting a Mark 1, and then this time we're going to have Bob, because he's a scientist, and just naming this Delete, just so that I don't accidentally have it cluttering up my saves page. It's just more common for me. I just particularly like having organization. Anyway, we're just going to EVA, going to jump off, and then we're just going to start running, and then physics warp. It's kind of slow, but we're just going to have to live with it. Other tips for our Kerbal Space program will come up later in this episode. We're not going to be going to any other planets or moons. In the next episode, if it does well, I'll probably go to Minmus. You know, just easy place to go. It only takes 467 meters per second. Sorry, 4,670 meters per second of delta V to get to there. Get into a circular orbit, then land, and then come back. So we're just doing a quick surface sample and EVA report over on the crawler way. Let's see, Bob just took a bit of a spill. we're just gonna run over back to our craft, and hopefully we can, well, we'll just get back. Right now would be a good time to just sit around and play with like if you're brand new to Kerbal Space program, I wouldn't recommend using this as a tutorial because I'm fairly new as well. I'd recommend go watching Ren Aerospace 2, my inspiration for this. It's very, very in-depth, well, not in-depth, but it gives you a nice tutorial on how to get to places like Gilly, Juna, Minmus, the Mun. I think he even goes to Eve at some point. So it's a good place to go if you ever need to get some help. Just make sure you know how to do some of the following things before you try to do any interplanetary missions, like going to Juno or Gilly. You're going to want to know how to do orbital rendezvous, just because it makes things so much easier for Juno, because you don't need to carry around as much weight. But we're just going to waddle on over to the main craft. I don't have ComNet enabled. I'm not that good at the game yet. And here we're just going to observe the last mystery goo. I'm actually not sure why the quality is so bad. And then we're just going to recover Bob. And then we're going to be able to recover the other craft and get all that lovely science. Cover the last thing on the launch pad, and then I forgot to go into the R&D building and actually get science, but turned out my craft had not saved the Mark 1. So we're just gonna have to build that again. It won't take long. It's good to see the building process again. Lots of these all of your early stage rockets will probably look the exact same as mine, just because you pretty much have all the other parts. I have 2 mods installed as of right now. I have Kerbal Engineer Reduc, and that's how I can see all my Delta V and stuff in the map screen. And you'll see that Kerb 1.1.7.2 up top by the launch buttons and stuff. That's just to show me like all my Delta V and stuff. And then we're just gonna have to go, and then yep, got to go to the R&D building to actually buy some stuff. So we're going to unlock the Engineering 101 node and the Basic Flight node, as well as the Survivability node and the General Rocketry node. Now that should be all the science you have. If you have more, maybe you can unlock something else, but that's all I have. So we're going to want to take that Mark 1 cockpit, make sure you drain all of its monopropellant, or yes, monopropellant. We'll put a service bay to protect those science experiments from re-entry heating. And then we're going to put a heat shield on the bottom, just because we're actually going to be going to space. Now, there's 2 types of symmetry, radial and mirror. Right now I'm using mirror. If you play around with them, you can find the difference. Mirror is used in the spaceplane hangar, and radial is used in the vehicle assembly building. They both can work in either one, but that's just the default. You want to make sure to close that up. You don't want to have those science experiments exposed to the atmosphere when they don't need to be. It really doesn't matter. We're going to be putting 4 of those big fuel tanks, and then we're going to be using the swivel engine. Make sure it's a swivel, not the Reliant. Now you're going to want to put that on 4 symmetry mode, just so that we can have fins on each side. And then we're going to launch. I really don't know why I talk in these long screens. Anyway, so since we got some new science experiments, the barometer and thermometer, you're going to want to start those, and then those can be used on an unlimited amount of times without a science Kerbal as long as you take the data. Otherwise, it just overrides your data, and we don't want that. Turn on SAS, go to about half thrust, maybe a bit more, and you're going to hit space to launch. Got to make sure that all your staging is right first, though. Sometimes parachutes can deploy at the same time as other things you don't want them to. It's just a mess. We're going to be tipping towards the north, just so we can get into the mountain ranges, because we're probably not going to land there on any other flights, we're probably going to land in the ocean, just so we can get a bit of extra science. You couldn't tell, science is the most important thing when you're playing science mode. So we're just going to pop open the map, press M to open the map, and then we're kind of just going to put max thrust, and then you're going to want to get your apoapsis above 70,000 meters. Once it's above 70,000 meters, then you're out of the atmosphere, and you're actually in space. You'll be able to run your experiments from there. Now I'm just going to kind of look, wait till we get to a point that I like, and then cut thrust. You maybe want to put on a bit more thrust while you're going through the actual atmosphere, just so it doesn't dip below, but it's not really necessary. Anyway, now we are in we're in the atmosphere high above Kerbin. We're going to want to run our mystery goo, barometer, and thermometer, as well as do a crew report, and now we can do an EVA report. So we're just going to want to do EVA. You're going to want to do the EVA report first, just make sure you can get that. Then you're going to take all the data from your barometer and thermometer, as well as the crew cabin, just so that you can do another crew report. As you can see, I kind of just forgot if I did an EVA report, so I'm just going to make sure. And then we're just going to wait here until we get into space at 70,000 meters. We're going to log pressure data. And then I forgot, you gotta be inside the actual crew cabin. You're gonna do a crew report. Then you're gonna want to log all of your science. And of course, observe a mystery goo, which I've forgotten to do. EVA report. And we're gonna take the data. Or maybe I didn't forget it. Anyway, then, oh yeah, there we go. And then we're gonna close those service bay doors and detach from the main stage. We don't need it anymore. You're going to want to turn on SAS point retrograde, just so that your heat shield is towards the atmosphere. Then you're going to just physics warp down. It takes a little bit, but that's alright. And then I realized I forgot something. The drogue chutes. And those are kind of important when you got heavier payload. Right now it's not that important, it's just nice to have. As well as I would always keep them on a separate stage, because you can actually deploy them before your main shoot, just so you can deploy your main shoot a bit earlier. Because they're much more durable, you can deploy them pretty much as soon as you get out of the heavy part of the atmosphere. What we're going through right now. And we're through. So right here is where you deploy your drogue chutes, but since we don't have them, which you should probably put on, we're just gonna wait for our main shoot to actually be able to deploy, and that's right now. And then you're just gonna physics warp down. It really doesn't matter at this point what you do. Just making sure that I have a crew report done. And then once we get near the bottom, we're actually landing on top of a mountain, I think, or, well, near one. So that's good, so we'll be able to get some more science if we land at the bottom one, because there's the top of the mountain, kind of the middle of the mountain, and then the bottom of the mountain. I just, in my heat shield, just try to get myself back normal. That didn't work. We're going to observe our last mystery goo, log pressure and temperature data. We're going to do a quick EVA once we're done that. We're going to take the data out of the capsule. Then we're going to board back so we can do the crew report, just in case we get too much science, like what happened the last time. Then you're going to do an EVA report and take a surface sample. Then you're going to board back and recover the vessel. And then we're just going to wait for it to load. Alright, now we got all that juicy science. We're going to go to the R&D building and unlock basic science and advanced rocketry. As well as I kind of just looked around at anything else I could buy, which I couldn't. I didn't have enough science. And now we're just going to take from here, we're just going to want to add the Science Junior instead of our payload, or our service base, sorry. And then, you know, that's nothing. So I just add a little description there. I'm gonna take a Science Junior. Oh, I just decided to add Science Junior in the description. Just want to make sure that everything is very clear in the description, in case you don't exactly remember what the crafts are for. So we're gonna remove the service bay and put a Science Junior, put the rest of the rocket back together, and this time I'm gonna add drogue chutes. Now, you're gonna want to go into your crew, and you're gonna need to make sure that you have a scientist crew, also Bob. This is very important because Bob can run the Mystery Goo and Science Junior more than once, which is very useful. Alright, so now we're just going to do an EVA. We're going to observe or conduct material study. And then we're going to take the data and then you're going to press restore. Now you can use again. Turn on SAS. Go to max throttle. And you're going to want to take about the same direction you did last time. I actually started my gravity turn a bit too early here, but that's okay. So we're just going to be going up until, well, you usually want to start around 100 meters per second or at 1,000 meters, but since we're not actually trying to get into orbit, it really doesn't matter. See those white lines on the craft? That means that's drag. You might want to slow down if you see that if you're worried about your delta V consumption, but I'm not. Tilting. And you can see we're in the heavy atmosphere, so you can do that as material so you can close the doors afterwards. Sometimes it can overheat if you don't have the doors closed. See those overheating bars? That's because I'm going way too fast through the atmosphere. So we're just gonna turn on, well, actually I ran out of fuel. Let's not talk about that. Anyway, so once we get through this, we're going to be able to do an EVA, collect the data, restore it, and then once we get into space, then we'll be able to do it all again. As you can see, collect data and restore. And then I'm just going to stay outside, and then we're just going to time warp, or physics warp, I guess, since we're not in space yet. But we're rapidly approaching there, so it's all good. And we're in space. So now we're going to do our material study again. And collect the data, restore, all is good. And then we're going to detach, turn on SAS, which you need. If you're playing with ComNet enabled, you need to have a direct connection to the KSC in order to actually use SAS. Or maneuver nodes for that matter, because Bob is not a scientist, or pilot, sorry. He is a scientist. I just added my drogue chutes to another stage. I'm going through the atmosphere. And then, just gonna give it a moment to get through. As you can see, we're going very fast. And then we're gonna deploy which experiences a lot of G's on Bob. And our main chute, and then we just time warp down. There's really nothing more to do once you've done that. So we're gonna, once we get to the bottom, we'll be able to recover, I guess. Gonna want to make sure once you get to the bottom to observe the material again. Just, you want to maximize the amount of science you get. Sorry, my mouth is a bit dry. And this is a pretty slow process. It's probably going to be sped up for you, which is good. This is ×4 speed for me, probably ×6 or ×8 speed for you. And we're landed. Bit of a tough landing. Observe the material space, but since we're in a new biome, you're going to want to do an EVA report and a surface sample. Never mind, we're not in a new biome. That's right, just recover the vessel. Now we're going to do one more craft. In this craft, we're actually going to do a splashdown in the ocean. So that's the sole reason why this one exists. We can unlock one node, and that's the advanced electronics. It'll be useful once you do your Minmus rocket. You could use if you have the Making History DLC, you can use those Soviet-style command pods, which have a blatant built-in, but they do not have, I think it's reaction wheels built in. So you need to make sure that you have thrust vectoring on your engines in order to actually use them. Now, I built this rocket thinking I was going to get into orbit. Spoiler alert, I didn't. So that second stage there, that would be to actually circularize, and then once we're ready to go back down into the Earth, we'd use that to deorbit. I'm going to put 4 of those fuel tanks, and once again, we're going to want to use the swivel. Make sure it's the swivel. Do not use the Reliant. The Reliant does not have thrust vectoring, but it will have its purpose once we do our mud mission. Add our aerodynamic fins. And I realized I forgot my science. Very important. You don't want to forget your science. So on the bottom, you're going to want to put a Science Junior. And then on the top, you're going to want to put a thermometer, barometer, and a mystery goo. Here I'm going to be using mirror symmetry instead of radial. Really, the best way to figure out the difference is to just play with them. There's really no other good way to describe them or how to kind of learn how to use them. And as you can see, here's our rocket. This is the Kerbal 3, an orbital class vehicle. As I thought, turned out it would not be an orbital class vehicle, which is kind of sad, but it really doesn't matter. Now, if you have any plans to do any actual KSP content, use this if you want, but I would much recommend Matt Lowndes videos. He makes phenomenal KSP videos, and they go into much more detail, and he's much more experienced than me. So we're just gonna launch our rocket. So at this point, I was planning to get into orbit, so I started my gravity turn at 100 meters per second. If you are going into orbit, you're going to want to aim for 45 degrees by 10,000 meters. It's a good place to aim for. Then you don't have, and then once you get to about 55 seconds to apoapsis, then you follow your prograde marker by just hitting the prograde button on your SAS menu right beside the speed dial gauge thing. Here I also forgot drogue chutes, so if you're gonna do this mission, add drogue chutes. If you are not bringing just the capsule, a heat shield, and a parachute back, add drogue chutes. It makes your life 100 times easier. Trust me. As well as if you're doing a flight like this, unless you're going interplanetary, you can probably shave off half of your blader on the heat shield. That's why if you're going to do some of these orbital missions, if you don't really have a plan, if you're doing these orbital missions, you probably could just get away with using a Soviet-style command pod, because they're a lot lighter. If you're playing in career mode, they're cheaper, and they have built-in a blatant. But you must note they come as with a decoupler, so you need to add the parachutes on the top of the circular crew module, because otherwise you're not going to have parachutes. You're going to have to do what the original Soviet one is. But as you can see, we did not actually have enough delta V to get into orbit, or we did. It's just we wouldn't be able to do it, which isn't good. So I'm just going to try to get my orbital path to get into somewhere useful. I was originally going to, as you can see, we just have even less this time. I was originally going to try to land in like a desert biome, but I just decided to do a splash down the ocean. Eventually, just splashdowns are more realistic to like the Apollo style mission. Well, actually, pretty much any, I think, American mission. I think only the Soviet Union touched down on land, and even SpaceX with their boosters on the drone ship technically lands in water, as well as the Falcon 1 boosters did a splashdown. At least they were supposed to if they didn't burn up in re-entry. So we're just gonna kind of get our orbital path going somewhere that we want, somewhere that's useful, somewhere that hopefully can work. And in this case, it does work. Now, my next video probably won't be nearly as long as this one, just because I don't want this one. My first video is not sped up. My second video will be, because it takes quite a while. As you can see, I'm getting no science from doing the mystery goo. There's no point in keeping it. You do get a bit, but it doesn't matter. Remember to point retrograde when you're re-entering the atmosphere. If you're going on the dark side of the planet, I apologize for that. But if you are going to do this mission, you're going to be able to see it much better. Just watching this clip back in my editing software, it's not nearly as bright as it is in game. But that's okay, because we get to see all the stars. As you can see, we're getting no mystery good data. But there is a silver lining here, because if I do the barometer and thermometer report, I do get more science for that, which is good. Science is always good. Sorry if you have epilepsy, by the way. That'll probably trigger it. And we'll just re-enter. My frame rate's starting to tank. That's not YouTube, that is just my game. Still nothing of any use from those mystery goo. And I decided to try it one more time. Still nothing. Then I logged temperature data and saw, hey, I actually get a lot of science for this. So then I also did the barometer, and we'll start our parachute. It's deployed, and I just decided to keep the data because why not, I guess. So we're just gonna make a soft waterly landing. I couldn't get it installed in time for this, but if you are going to be playing Kerbal Space Program, I would recommend always having the mods Kerbal Alarm Clock, Kerbal Engineer Reduc, and Better Time on. Because eventually you're gonna need to use those nuclear engines, which have abysmal thrust to weight ratio, but they're extremely efficient. And that's what we want. So we're gonna observe all of our science. I'm going to do an EVA report and a surface sample, as well as, I don't know if I did it already, but a crew report as well, just because we're in the water now. And then we're going to cover the vessel, and that's pretty much going to be it. We'll see what we unlock in the R&D building, and then that'll be it for the video. So I hope you enjoyed. If this does relatively well for my first ever YouTube video, I'll probably do another one. I'm just looking at everything I can unlock. Really, none of this is going to be useful, but I have a bit of surplus science. There's no point in holding on to it. You're going to spend it all eventually. And I end up going for aviation, I think. Maybe not. Yes. Alright, we're going to go for aviation, and that's going to be it for the video. Hope you enjoyed, and see you later.